彼の文です。しらしらしい。
やめて。誰か。
In the morning, when the princess awakes, she immediately asks how Asebi did on the instrument. Her assistant Somomo tells her that she was amazing on the koto, displaying her talents firsthand. She then tells Somomo of her relationship to Asebi, her being the only one who was really there for her. She eventually began referring to her as a sister, hoping that she could stay with her forever. Upon hearing this, Somomo informs her that she will do everything in her power to make Asebi the wife, knowing if she became the prince's wife, she could be with her more often. Meanwhile, back in the palace, the prince meets with Natsuka's right-hand man to talk about the future. He tells the prince that he knows Natsuka has no chance at the throne, despite him striving for it, so he offers a proposal. He informs him that he will keep Natsuka from taking the throne as long as he can get protection after it happens. He knows that if Rokon's plans get exposed to the world, then Natsuka will surely be imprisoned and labeled as a traitor. With all of this being said, the prince agrees to his demands, but tells him before he does anything he needs to see his talents. Later that day, Natsuka arrives at the palace to meet with the empress. She talks about how it's bad how he can't gain the throne, but she will continue trying. She asks Natsuka if he has been flirting with any girls recently, informing him she plans on making him marry into a powerful family. One of these families includes the Southern family, the one that the empress herself is from. Yukiya, on the other hand, continues his day working for the prince, doing whatever he asks. With Atsufasa finally leaving their spot, he wishes him off, hoping he won't come back anytime soon. Yukiya urges him to stay safe, knowing that if he makes one mistake, he could lose his head in the stead of Natsuka. He then heads out and Sumio approaches Yukiya, telling him to stay careful. He explains that Atsufasa is also from the Southern house, so he surely has some kind of dark plan underneath. While all of this happens, Asebi continues to loiter around in the capital, taking up all the food supplies. Today she gets dressed in a new outfit, thinking that the prince will arrive today. Unsurprisingly, however, the day doesn't come, and she is left pretty for no reason. She wishes that he would come meet them already, her taking a strong liking to the prince since a young age. They then decide to go stargazing, knowing the prince isn't stopping by today. To do their stargazing, the palace has prepared a large venue to hang out in, making it a big ordeal. At the head of the venue, she finds Suzuki dressed up in a dress much better looking than her own. She gets self-conscious, so she asks her how she acquired such beautiful dresses. Suzuki informs her that she crafted it herself, claiming that she would never let some random make her dress. While they talk, the princess emerges and asks Asebi to play the koto before the people. She tries to refuse, but her attendant shows that she has already prepared it for her. Asebi then continues to try and reject the request, but the other girls tell her to play it already. With this being said, she walks over to the koto and begins stringing it for all to hear. Like last time, she plays a soothing melody, impressing them after thinking she had no talent for the instrument. While she plays, she begins adding in some extra touches to make it even better, causing petals to magically appear before them. They recognize her talents are superior to everybody else, so they wonder if they will lose a chance at rizzing the prince. Sasuke in particular blushes after doubting her skills. Once she finishes, the princess thanks Hamayu for urging her to play, despite her telling her to play in a robust way. Some old hag then thanks Asebi for the display, asking her where she learned to play. She also tells the princess that it's a bit unfair to give one of the candidates something so special, claiming the koto is a famous one handed down. She then tells Asebi that she is a fake, informing her of a story long ago where one of the candidates seduced the prince with a koto only to destroy the palace. She calls Asebi something rude and tells her she will end up like her mother surely. This saddens her, so she runs off to cry alone in a room. The princess notices this, so she goes to apologize, thinking that it was for the good when presenting the koto. She also asks Asebi to continue her race to marry the prince, hoping that they will one day truly become sisters. She also informs her that she will do everything in her power to help her. With this being said, Asebi asks her to leave Somomo with her, hoping to gain another servant under her wing. Although she is reluctant at first, the princess accepts her request, ordering Somomo to now become her servant. As this happens, Yukiya sits around with the prince as usual, doing absolutely nothing. With the stargazing ceremony at hand, however, Yukiya urges him to go to the palace already. Finally, after 5 episodes of dodging his wives, he heads out to go to the palace, leaving Yukiya to watch over the spot. As a payment for his services, he gives him a small energy ball. While he goes to head back inside, he notices some rando in the sky, so he chases after the prince. It takes some time, but Yukiya eventually catches up and informs him the Southern House is requesting an audience with him. With this being said, he is able to dodge the event, sending Yukiya to apologize on their behalf. While the girls don't care much, the elders of the houses demand the prince give them some attention. One of the girls then asks why he doesn't send letters, to which Yukiya explains he has been sending letters. With them not receiving this, it shows that the letters have somehow been disappearing. The old hag then gets angry by this, so she rushes Yukiya, forcing him to jump off the cliff and disappear. Meanwhile, within the southern palace, the prince goes to meet with all of their delegates, accompanied by Natsuka. While they are unsure of what the meeting is about at first, they know it must be something important. Back in the palace, the various servants gossip about how disrespectful the prince is for constantly dodging them. Asabi in particular talks with some of them, hoping to get a present from another lady hung up. Her old servant tells her that would be glazing too much, so she snatches it, giving her no chance to express her thanks. While this occurs, the southern and eastern house girls meet to talk about the future. The eastern girl tells the southern that she will reveal her secret of the past if she continues to try and become the prince's wife. The prince, on the other hand, finally arrives at the southern house, asking everyone to stay and witness what he has to say. Natsuka tries to leave, but with him urging him to stay, he is forced to sit back down. With the 4 houses competing to find the best of the best, one of the girls is seen attempting to get another to back out of the competition. As this happens, another girl notices her from the background watching idly. She wonders what they are talking about, not being able to hear a peep with her being so far away. The northern house then informs the southern that she has no intentions of backing out, so if she doesn't help her, she will expose her secret. With no other choice, she decides to help her out, knowing if she didn't, then only misfortune will come her way. Considering they are now teamed up, they talk about the other girls and question why the western house would send someone like Asabi, her being the worst of the worst. Meanwhile, in the southern house's palace, Yukiya arrives on behalf of the prince. When he attempts to enter, he is knocked down by Rokon, showing him no mercy. With Yukiya having witnessed his killing spree previously, he acts cautiously around him. He attempts to leave immediately, but he stops him, asking if he was the one who spied on his meeting within the ravine. Being as it did happen to be him, he stops him from running and tells him he has a couple of questions to ask. While all of this goes down, the prince meets with some others to talk about his future. He asks the leader of the palace why he would send in his daughter who doesn't look like him. The head of the house reveals that she is in fact not his daughter, thus making it a huge lie. He informs the prince that he does have a biological daughter, but she is ugly, so he didn't send her. This doesn't faze the prince, however, so he demands he explain his true reason. He questions whether it was his decision or not, thinking someone else was behind it. Upon asking him these things, Natsuka interrupts them, changing the topic of conversation. He tells the prince that he should respect him for not lying about anything, thus he should drop the topic. Natsuka also informs him that it would bring chaos if they changed the current potential wives this far into the competition. The prince tells him that he doesn't want anything sketchy going on, so as long as all looks good, he won't pay it any mind. Having talked about pretty much nothing, the prince takes his leave but gets dirty looks on his way out. The man who gave him a dirty look then enters the other room, asking what that was all about. He claims that he thought the prince would be too scared to come to this meeting, so he is stunned. Upon hearing this, Natsuka informs them that his brother is super smart, so everything is tactical that he is doing. With this being said, he orders them to stay cautious and not to act hastily, knowing the prince could see through their moves with ease. Later that day, when the prince is walking around the palace, he notices Yukiya getting picked on by Rokon. Apparently, Rokon is asking him a bunch of random questions of his origin, eventually asking him to work for him. Being as Yukiya serves the soon-to-be emperor, he instantly denies his request, asking why he would follow someone like him. This makes Rokon try to blackmail him into claiming he could kill him at any moment, but Yukiya doesn't care. He tells him he is serving the prince as punishment, and he intends on heading back to his family once he finishes things here. Upon hearing this, the prince emerges, but doesn't show any discomfort, knowing that he was ordered to serve him all along. Sumio then comes out of the bushes, causing the prince to roast him for hiding like a scaredy cat. That night, like usual, the potential queens sit around doing absolutely nothing except spend the taxpayers' money. They enjoy nice food and great music while the prince is forced to walk home in the dark. While they walk, the prince tells Yukiya that he feels bad for not being able to attend the Cherry Blossom Palace. He reveals that he would like to flirt with the ladies, but with the tension rising and many assassins out for his head, he has no choice but to hide. He tells Yukiya that until the day when he is able to ascend the throne comes, he will never be able to walk around freely. In order to become the leader, he has to avoid every potential danger possible, making Yukiya realize he isn't just some coward. Despite this, all the prince puts up with all of this, causing Yukiya to give him some tips. He informs him that he always leaves himself open to be attacked, hoping he stays safe. The prince reminds him that he is the true Golden Raven, so he can deal with a few enemies with ease. Apparently the main thing he fears is being turned on by everyone and attacked by multiple people. To clear some of the tension, Yukiya informs them that he plans on leaving once his 1 year of service is up, showing no remorse. Meanwhile, Asebi is greeted by Somomo presenting her with a gift from another house. Bringing out a small box, Asebi is excited to see such a previous item, not knowing what's inside. When she opens the box, she finds a letter from someone bringing her a saddened face. Once she finishes reading it, she tries to head inside, but is stopped by Shiratama. With crazy eyes, she asks who wrote it, hoping it wasn't a letter from the prince. Asebi tries to deny it, but she immediately assumes that she is the one who has been stealing the letters. Asebi tells her to stop, but she persists, so she slaps her across the face. This enrages Shiratama, so she pushes Asebi into the water, knowing she can't swim. With no help, she begins to drown, but before she does, Kikuno comes to save her. She demands an answer from Shiratama, but she blames it on her tripping and falling. She claims that they violated her, having the mark on her face to prove it. Kikuno tries to tell her that she can't lie out of this, but Shiratama reminds her of their place. She explains that her house and the southern house have much more land and power than either of their families do. With this being said, she thinks that she is practically invincible considering her army and backings. Even after hearing this, Kikuno tells her she is still going to snitch, but Shiratama has no remorse. She informs them that she cares not about their feelings or the prince's feelings. She claims that she is here to win the prince over to increase their power, showing she plans on doing anything within her power to ensure that. Kikuno asks her if she is even human, questioning how she can be so heartless. Shiratama still cares not what they say, however, going as far as to whip out a dagger. She tells them that she will do anything to marry the prince, even killing them if needed. Once she leaves, Asebi and Kikuno are left in the lake, wondering what to do next, knowing this is getting out of control. To start, they head back inside to talk things out, realizing they have no option but to team up as well. Being that Kikuno has been nice to her the entire time, she decides to treat her to some tea. While they chat, Asebi reveals the letter was regarding information about her biological mother, her not knowing where she is. Once Kikuno hears this, she reveals she also has her own secrets, including more information about the original girl who played the instrument. With her winning over the Emperor's heart, she was the perfect wife, but ended up falling into the current Empress's plans. She used an incense to intoxicate her, thus forcing her to withdraw from the competition. On top of this, Kikuno assumes that she is her mother, considering they are both good at the instrument, and was the princess of her land. With so much information being dumped on her, she decides to take some time to think this all through. Before she does, however, she makes sure to thank Kikuno for everything she has helped her with thus far. Later that week, the prince is approached by a new member to join their palace. The man introduces himself as Kazumi, a gardener who also happens to be a longtime friend of the prince's. Although he has put his faith in him, Yukiya still is suspicious of him, his arrival being too perfectly timed. While this happens, Natsuka is seen praying alongside Rokon about the future. Rokon informs him that he should be wary of his servant Atsufusa, him acting mad sus recently. He wonders what he is plotting, but knows if he asks, then it will only escalate or cause problems. Rokon also tells him that there was a death within the palace. With this death being someone close to Natsuka, he decides to pay his respects and take some alone time to himself. When the prince heard of this, he went to inspect the body, knowing it wasn't an accident. Apparently this girl was someone who relayed information between the ladies in waiting, meaning she was related to the marriage. On top of this, you have to remember she is a raven, so she surely wouldn't die from heights unless it was a planned attack. This leads to the question of who could possibly do this, making them investigate further. Sumio reports to the others that this wasn't an accident, asking them if they know anything. He tells all of them that by the order of the prince he will investigate it further. Sumio then attempts to leave, but he is stopped by Asebi questioning what happened. He doesn't realize who she is at first, but when he does, he bows down to her. It is revealed this girl was Somomo, the attendant to Asebi who helped her with various things. Upon hearing this, Sumio tells her that he will do everything in his power to bring out the truth, asking her to wait until he figures it out. He then leaves without another word, leaving Asebi alone. As she contemplates what to do, Princess Fujinami emerges behind her with tearful eyes. Samomo had previously been her attendant and close friend that she sent to serve Asebi. Because of this, she blames herself for her death, thinking she sent her into her death. Following this, the houses meet together to try and figure out who is behind it. Shiratama instantly blames Asebi for her death, claiming she is the most likely suspect. She informs the others that Asebi would treat her poorly, making her believe that she killed her because she was being rude to her. She also brings up Asebi's mother, telling her she got this tendency from her witch mother. Kikuno stops her from advancing her claims, thus causing Shiratama to question her relationship with Asebi. She wonders if the western and eastern houses are working together, hoping that isn't the case. As she tries to continue trapping her, she is interrupted by a guard telling them they will deal with it. She claims that nobody will be allowed to exit until they do figure it out, nor can they send letters of the events outside. Now, with this being settled, the girls decide to leave, realizing only bad things will come by staying. As this happens, the prince boards his raven in preparation of heading to his usual places. Before he leaves, Yukiya asks him if he can truly trust Kasumi, wondering how he can trust him. He claims that he has seen him within the Northern House before, so the prince explains more about him. Having previously been a Northern House spy, he has now changed his motives to be a simple gardener, with the promise from the prince for peace. As he thinks about this, he sneaks up behind him, informing him he is ready to go. Yukiya then leads him up a mountain where the two of them hope to find something rare. While they walk, Yukiya asks more about Kasumi's life, questioning whether he knows the Northern House's princess. He tells him that he might, but he doesn't know who it is, so he'd need to see her firsthand. After some wandering, they find the girls emerging from the houses, revealing he knows Shiratama. He becomes stunned, making Yukiya wonder what his relationship to her is. Following this during the night, Shiratama is seen slicing up every letter that comes their way, revealing she is the letter thief. The prince, on the other hand, heads into the western house hoping to meet with Asebi's mother. As he walks through town, various people notice him as a fancy-looking man, so they question who it could be. Within the southern house, they talk about how the prince has gone missing, making them worry what he is planning. Atsufafa, however, urges his lord to take action, telling him that he is surely planning something. Upon hearing this, the lord smacks him across the face and reminds him of his standing. He tells him that he has no place to give him orders or question someone like the prince's authority. Meanwhile, the prince goes to meet with the maiden, asking how she is doing. With her face injured, he apologized on behalf of his family, wishing she didn't have to suffer such a thing. She then opens the door and stands before him, causing everyone around her to get into an uproar. She reveals that she was never injured, but rather taken out from the race for other reasons. As this happens, Shiratama throws out the destroyed letters, leaving no trace behind. Following this, an assassin is seen entering Kikuno's room, barging around in the process. She wakes up before he can strike her, thus alerting the entire castle to what's going on. Firstly, the important people all get protected, then they begin the search around the palace for this assassin. With Shiratama being nowhere to be found during this moment, she runs back, not wanting to get suspected. As she does, she notices the intruder getting stricken down by the guards. After slicing off the raven's head, they never do end up learning who it is, leaving Shiratama shocked. As this was a part of her plan all along to assassinate Kikuno, she falls to the ground. She tells the southern lady that there is no way this corpse is the person who she employed, calling him filthy. Shiratama says that he is a coward, referring to someone random. She lets out a bit of her crazy side, so her attendant, the old hag, pulls her aside. They then ask Takimoto, the head of the guards, to explain to them what happened. She informs them that an intruder entered the palace with hopes of taking out Kikuno. She explains that he was probably related to the death of Samomo as well, pulling out a comb. She informs them that this comb was belonging to Kikuno's house, meaning she was involved in stealing from their house. With this being revealed, she says that the thief must have come to cover up any of the evidence that could still be around her. Upon hearing this, Asebi denies these requests, telling everyone there is no way Samomo could be a thief. Hamayu then begins walking away without saying a word, heading directly to the northern house. She barges in with Asebi behind her, demanding to see their mistress. Hamayu claims that she needs to see Shiratama, or else she will continue to be suspicious of her. When she enters her room, she finds Shiratama slicing up all of the letters and making them into cranes. This reveals that she is in charge of stealing all of the letters. Being as she has a knife in hand, Hamayu proceeds with caution, but decides to confront her regardless. He asks her to go home, knowing she is on her wit's end from doing so many shady activities. Despite saying this, Shiratama tells her she is fine, acting like a maniac. Hamayu tells her that she is sure that she knew the intruder, thinking she is acting crazy because she sent them in. With this being said, she demands that she head back to her house, knowing she is completely unfit to become the Empress. Even after getting exposed, she tells her that she will never give up, claiming she was born to marry the prince. Walking to a couple of graves is the prince, who prays that there will be no further killing to try and win him over. Meanwhile, as this happens, the Shiratama is informed that she no longer has any place here, considering she is in love with another man. Because of this, they want her to drop out immediately. As this happens, she remembers her lover being killed before her eyes, causing her demeanor to shatter. 10 years before this happens, Shiratama had gone to meet with her grandparents, who are just as old looking as they currently are. Her mother thanks them for taking her in, revealing this was the moment when she was formally taken in as a member of their family. They tell her, as the third daughter of the North family, she will potentially compete to win over the prince, making her life devoted to winning him over since birth. She makes the promise to do her best to impress them, making them feel as though they made the right decision. While this happens, the prince's old-time friend is looking in a jar to find an origami piece of paper. He is then approached by Shiratama, thanking him for always bringing her flowers. She then asks for his name, to which he reveals he is Kazumi. She thanks him for being so sweet to her, but he informs her he is only doing his job. Despite this, she welcomed him into their house, causing him to constantly bring her flowers. With so many blooming flowers in the area, he never had any trouble bringing her back something good to look at. Despite this, he knew one day it would come when she would need to become the prince's potential wife. He promised to one day bring her the most beautiful flowers, knowing it will help him win her over. Before this ever happened, however, she was told that she would be competing to compete for the prince's hand in marriage. After learning this, she reminded her attendant of her feelings for Kazumi. Even after hearing this, she was told to forget about him, knowing she will never be able to wed him. After these events, Kazumi took her to a group of flowers, asking her to run away with him. He tells her that although he doesn't have much, he promises to do his best to always ensure she is happy. She then informs him that even though she loves him, running away together would never fix their problems. Kazumi tries again after this, telling her no matter what happens, he will always be there for her. When it came time to announce her as a member of the ritual, she accepted her fate. She was then presented with a letter from Kazumi, making her remember her times with him. She became sad that she had to leave him, wishing she had never promised to be a princess candidate. This is the reason why she tried so hard to win, knowing if she ever ended up becoming the queen, then she would be able to do as she pleases. She went as far as pushing Asebi into the water, and even intercepting all of the prince's letters, making anyone else's advances meaningless. One night she considered jumping off the cliff to end it all for good. Before she did, however, Kazumi appeared before her, causing her to remember everything he had done for her. She wishes that she could be with him, but knows that she no longer deserves his grace. She informs him that she has changed, but he persists, telling her everything she has done for him he remembers. Because of this, he claims that she will one day become his woman, informing her next new moon he will expect a response from her. The two shared a moment during this time, with her wanting to go, but knowing she can't. He told her he would stay as long as she wanted, always vowing to commit to her. Now, with him dead after attempting to save her, she is depressed. She thinks there will never be a good time in her life, so she demands for the others to leave her alone. With cold eyes, she glares at the other girls, informing them she will become the princess's wife. She also reminds the southern girl that she promised to help her in exchange for not revealing her secret. She thinks that because their families are the strongest of the four, they have nobody attempting to take them down. After hearing this, the southern girl informs her that she never promised her. She claims that the south will never succumb to others' houses, showing she is betraying Shiratama. Now, with her losing everything, she wonders what to do, knowing her only chance is to continue to rely on her family's influence. As this happens, the Empress plays shogi until she is approached by her brother. He tells her to let her play, making the two talk about some important business things. He reveals that she called him here to talk about some things. She also tells him that the guards need to get better at their jobs, seeing as an intruder was easily able to break in. She then declares if the prince won't come to them, then she will have no choice but to come to him. Shiratama, on the other hand, tells the others that she has never once told a lie. She claims that the southern house is a horse and not a real raven in the first place. She reveals that 10 years ago her family committed a grave crime but covered it up. This couple had a single daughter who happens to be Hamayu, the southern princess. Upon hearing this, they claim it's meaningless slander, but Hamayu decides to tell them the truth. Aishi explains that she was born into a family of criminals who ended up killing the previous Lord of the South. On top of this, her parents killed the previous prince and their father in order to help crown the current emperor. With the royal house joining their side, the only punishment they received was her sister getting tortured. They blamed her as the reasoning for this, all making her a horse rather than another hill raven, as she was supposed to be. The Empress, however, talks about how the ritual is nothing more than a game to her. She thinks that they are all game pieces that she controls, knowing in the end the decision for the winner is up to the people with power. Her brother informs her that although this may be the case, they are living life leisurely thanks to their amenities. Hamayu then explains that years back the Empress's sister ended up taking her in as their own, raising her to become the princess. She had one mission during this time, and it was to assassinate the prince. After revealing this, she explains that is the reason for why the prince always avoids the palace. If the prince ends up dying, then Natsuka will ascend to the throne, thus allowing them to become the most powerful family. With them then holding the post as emperors and empresses for the past 3 generations, they will claim that it all belongs to them. After revealing all of this, she tells them that she can't believe she wants her family to kill the prince. She then asks Shiratama if she still wants to expose her, knowing she has the backing of the most powerful people imaginable. She then takes off her robe and informs them that she told them too much, so she needs to run. She asks the others to watch over her family and make sure nobody gets involved with her. Before she leaves, she tells them that the palace isn't a place where they are supposed to find happiness, but rather somewhere that they are to be sold off. She then enters her raven form and hits the dash, leaving them to wonder what is next to happen. After this happens, the Empress learns that she ran away, so she tells her attendant to summon someone to her steed. The prince, on the other hand, is approached by Yukiya, who asks why he ran away so fast. He refers to him as the prince, but he informs him that he is now a simple servant working under disguise. Yukiya tells him of all he learned within the palace, showing that the southern family does in fact take him out. With Sumio asking various questions, they never learn the identity of the raven that attacked the area. Apparently they were told that it was handled, so they have nothing to worry about. The one thing they did learn, however, is that Hamayu was tasked with killing the prince, showing he was right about getting assassinated if he entered the palace. Now, with all of this on the table, the prince asks Yukiya what he plans on doing after his time under his steed is out. He informs him that he thinks that the prince needs to make a decision already, seeing all that has happened thus far. The prince, however, shows no signs of doing this, knowing there are still attempts at his life. Yukiya then realizes that Hamayu isn't the assassin, but rather it must be a misdirection to try and lure them in. The prince explains that even if there is another assassin, he will still make his pick by the time of the end of the ritual. He tells Yukiya it's time to leave so that he can confirm his suspicions. With this being said, he throws Yukiya a piece of rubbish and tells him it's time they head out to learn more about these ordeals. While this happens, Sumio finds a raven lying idly on the side of a river. He notices it's still alive, so he runs over to attempt and help it, not knowing what he is getting himself into.